Hi, everyone, and welcome to our monthly podcast with the one, the only Mr. Derek Johnson, who indubitably has great information to share with us, as he always does. And we're looking forward to getting his insights on all things geopolitical, militaristic, and financial that will help us cross this finish line and win the race we know God has already won. If you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share. Helps the channel grow and others gain the knowledge you've been afforded. Those of you who are not aware, Derek is a retired Army veteran. He's a family guy, singer, songwriter, and he has two great books out. The Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part One, and he's finishing up Part Two. And so we'll be looking forward to getting all of his insights today. Derek, how are you doing today, good sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. Just recovering for a long trip, a week at Trump Doral in Miami. So it's a good little haul down there when you have to drive it. So
Yeah,
you know,
it, yeah. Having done that, I know exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, I can appreciate that. Derek, the first question I had today for you is I was thinking about it on my walk this morning with the Lord, and he brought through the Holy Spirit something to mind that I thought was sort of a bit, unorthodox and unique. It's not something we've really talked about, but I think it's something that needs to be um, gauged and broached, I should say, and emphasized. And that is, as a former military vet, you know all too well the power of the mind, right? Sun Tzu, Art of War, talks about the battles won before it's even begun, before it's even fought on the battlefield. So, Ephesians 6:12, as you know, talks all about spiritual warfare and what we're really fighting against. And this battle that we're in is an information war. That's a given. A two-part question. The first part is, how important is it to you, and how much of a discipline has it been for you to condition your mindset towards faith over fear and winning the battle in the long protracted way? And what assurances can you give people about all the misinformation and misdirection they're seeing done on purpose to try to gin up the fear porn mentally, how to combat against that and give them some reassurance that we are in fact on the winning path?
it's very important. It's in every aspects of life, no matter what it is, relationships, business relationships, partners, etc. I mean, it's very important to. I've been actually focusing on this in some of my talks with different people. Um, and even I have friends who are battling stuff in their personal life unrelated to government, military. And I just had this conversation with a friend yesterday. I'm like, what they're going through. It truly is if you believe in God, if you're spiritual, if God brought you to it, He'll lead you through it. So if you're trusting God first, not it's not one of those things where you're not trusting God, not praying to God, not seeking His word and His counsel. If you wait to get in the middle of a battle and then go, oh, He's still there. He's just gonna be there a little bit differently. You know what I mean? And also in your spiritual. So like with me, you know, so with friends that are, I have a personal friend that's dealing with something in my family, and I talked about how military. I said this all week down at with different people at Trump Doral, was saying that military, we're not better than people, but we are different. And now there's a lot of veterans there's different kinds of veterans. Yeah, been talking to a friend about this, about the mentality you have to have. And my grandfather told me at a young age that, like the Bible says, there's a time that you'll put away certain things.
Mhm.
And I think that, I mean, personally myself, I remember that time I felt that in my heart. And I think everybody reaches that at a different place in time. And then at the same time, though, you have to seek that as well. You have to seek God's counsel, have to seek His light, you have to seek that. And I started seeking that later on in life. Now I feel like I was always a good person. It's like I grew up in church and grew up with that mentality. My dad was always positive. My grandpa was a real positive person. And so it's a combination of all things to me, but um, you know, noise is always around. It's always been around. Then you have people who are in the know, and you have people who want to be in the know and have a good heart, but yet sometimes that can be dangerous, right? Because like I explained all this week, This is a military government, military operation, continuity government, continuity operation, meaning like it's a defined by law operation, which means there's defined people that knows exactly what's going on and also are participants of that, workers, whatever terms you want to use, officials. All right. And there's a lot of people that's always surrounding stuff like that. It's the same thing with the music industry or anywhere else, like, or even corporations. You have a major company or a major corporation, but then you have these things called bottom feeders and people who try to mimic or look like those. Same thing, music industry. There are actual people with Billboard hits. Billboard is the chart that's been used all these years, but then you have all these others around. Sometimes they can be good people with good heart. They just didn't have this opportunity. But sometimes, and a lot of times, more too often, these people have ulterior motives and things of that nature. So it's like I've been telling people, if you want to know what's going on, if you love President Trump, if you support President Trump, then there's a finite blueprint of which he's working with. And it is in laws and orders. But then laws and orders is a broad topic, but there's a unique set of laws and orders that define a military strategy and a military government and also continuity government, continuity operations. Now, there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't know that because they don't know laws and orders, period. And that's okay. So how do you break through the noise? How do you find that middle lane is what I've been teaching people about. It's like there's noise, there's chaos, pandemonium, there's distractions. All right. A lot of distractions are actually used for it. So it's like finding the plan, the platform, the strategy. So the mentality has to be there. All right. That's why nothing shakes me. When I see something in the news or whatever it is, I have a foundation. And President Trump's foundation is my foundation, or probably backwards. My foundation is President Trump's foundation. All right. Because he's the commander. All right. He's a supreme commander. He's a supreme commander, meaning he is the commander that all the world leaders are looking to. All right. And there's no way you could have pulled this off. So your mentality has to be like very, very strong. And how do you break through all that? Well, you have to find once it's kind of like the Bible says. I mean, the Bible, there's an answer for everything in the Bible. And there's never been anything that I cannot find in the Bible when I saw it. The Bible does say once you've heard, you've heard. So like if you find someone like me who can say, look, I don't make predictive dates. I don't talk about drama, propaganda, any of that. When you find someone like me who says, hey, go look at this article, or go, not article meaning like the, a news article. Look at this article from article this of the Constitution. Here's President Trump's law and it matches. All right. Or here's an executive order and here's the visual of that order out there. All right. That's how I know what I'm talking about. And like my books, I'm not advertising here, but like my books, the first one I put in print December 2023. Well, there's stuff happening right now that's already in that book from way back here, but it's not a predictive date. It's just a law and an order saying this is a military government. Here's kind of what it looks like. Here's what we're going or headed for and what it'll look like somewhere over here. And it's already happening. And so, I do teach people to remove stuff out of your life. And it's like I said this week, if I started naming names of people not to listen to, then I would be doing what everybody else does by mudslinging on these levels. But I wish I could from the standpoint of showing, hey, some of these people even have criminal records. All right. So you're following someone with a criminal record. The military don't recruit people with criminal records. The military don't recruit people who've never been in law enforcement all their life. And then all of a sudden they're, military and the government don't work like that. And so I wish I could, because that would eliminate a lot of the talking lips on mine and your levels out there. And then also, military veterans. President Trump said specifically early on, veterans, remember your oath. All right. And so there's been voluntary callbacks and involuntary callbacks. So anybody out there that's a veteran, if you have a reserve clause still on your contract, you could have actually volunteered to go back during this time period. And if you qualified, it depends on your health and a lot of other things and your MOS and what you did. They may have not have needed you. However, you could have been serving this time period, but our oath never expires. All right. So for people out there, your mentality does need to be that. And then also, my grandpa always said, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. All right. So if you're letting yourself worry and you're feeding yourself, you can let your mind think a lot of things. All right. And I'll share one more example. When a Southern boy's growing up, it's like a rites of passage per se. Our dads take us deer hunting, right? Well, you hunt in the morning, all day, evening, but as it's getting dark, all right. If you got a dad like mine, he wasn't coming until about 20 or 30 minutes after dark. So you're sitting on this deer stand, right? When you're 6 and 7 years old, you can see cowboys and Indians out in the field shooting each other and all these other things. Like you see the booger man and Swamp Thing and all these other things coming after you, right? Especially you got a creative mind like I did. All right. And you get scared because when you're little, but your dad's teaching you. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing in these woods that can harm you. And once I got old enough to have a gun and learn the safety of having a weapon, then my dad's like, you're the one with the gun. You're in control. If something did come up to you and it was creating harm to you, halt, stop right there. If it was a person, stop. He said, if they don't stop, fire warning. They don't stop again, hit them in the leg. They don't stop again, stop them. So it's like you learn control, and everything in life is about control. And we're all guilty. I mean, I'm guilty every day when I drive in like traffic like Miami. My control gets lesser and lesser when people
Yeah.
are not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
So we all have to practice it daily. All right. But stuff like this, if you love President Trump, if you support President Trump, you have to believe he's not firing off at the hip as he goes. All right. So that means he's got a plan in place. There's a strategy, especially being the outsider. Never seen before like this. This guy didn't just walk in as an outsider in a normal presidency and disrupt all this without some kind of civil war or world war.
Yeah.
No
No,
way.
that's a good point. Thank you. Thank you, Derek, for that. Speaking of the Doral, since you brought that up, I remember you went there about a year and a half ago, I believe. You went out there before he was elected optically president. We know he's been the commander in chief the whole time. What were your impressions or takeaways from this last trip? What was different about this trip for you than the last one? What things did you notice?
Oh well, when I was in a Trump Doral, Miami, 2 years. It was actually 2 years to the day,
Okay.
just about.
Okay.
Um, that was a different event too, but everybody there is lively and upbeat. The attitudes of people, of course, you have all different kinds of members of Trump Doral anyway. There's people who are just there to play golf and love that high clientele lifestyle, which is fine. If you got it and you want it, then you can have it. But most of the people are upbeat around there. The workers, those are the ones that are cool. Like all the workers, everybody who rides you around, valet and your waiters and waitresses, they're from all over. They actually wear their name tags with where they're from. I saw Poland, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, all different places, and they love President Trump. And so that's Trump Doral is more of a resort like that kind of deal. But you know, most everybody that I know that are members, they know what's going on per se. Now some don't again. It's just like anything else, but the vibe's a lot more cooler. And I also know someone that I saw this week that works for the Pentagon, and I've known them also before the new phase, the new transition with the January the 20th, 2025 third visual. And that, like I said, the attitudes flipped massively. So all the DEI gone, all the those are all constraints, and a lot of people don't realize that they're just constraints because when you're having to focus too much on oh, I can't, I can't say that, or yeah. When you're just constrained everywhere, it's kind of like football, and I think President Trump's about to make football great again too, because he's bringing the NFL draft to Washington D.C.
Right.
And I bring football up for a reason. A lot of people love the game, NFL and college. A lot of Americans love football. Well, they added all these stupid penalties, like a targeting penalty. Well, when you're running around on the field and you're running full speed, it's your brain is it's just you're running and you I gotta make the tackle, but then all of a sudden you gotta go, wait, I can't tackle the quarterback high, I can't tackle him low, I gotta hit him here. It anyone who's ever played the game, you can't think that fast. You just the object of the game is to get the person on the ground.
Yeah.
It's not that, oh, don't hit him here, don't hit him here, can't hit him here, don't do this, don't hit. It's just, and people will say that's never played the game. Well, that's not hard to do. You just think about it while you're running. No, it's not. You got to think of all different things. Are they gonna throw it while I'm, chasing them? Well, what if I could back up and cover the running back coming out of the backfield? No, you don't just do that. So it's the same kind of aspect. It's like all these things that constrain everything actually was not a good thing at all. And it makes people, not work as effectively and efficiently. So I thought that was cool to get to talk with this person. I can't tell who they are, but still like the attitudes, right? Which goes to mentality. And that goes to also thinking and how you think and what we're talking about a while ago, the control of your mind has a lot to do with also your attitude as well. So the vibe's perfect. Everybody's excited. I saw a guy that I was sitting there doing a live out behind the clubhouse, overlooking the golf course, and there was a fellow that walked by and he was like, Jared Johnson, and I love your work. And he wasn't a part of the event. He's actually a member. And when he showed me his Instagram, he's actually someone who goes on Newsmax and a few other things but he talks about capital investments, things like that, from a financial aspect. So, you just never know who you're going to run into there, but a lot of great people. But everybody's right now is just like stoked. And the only negative, I guess, would be everybody's ready for the Band-Aid to be ripped off. Just like, okay, we're ready. And if the ones who aren't ready, they'll get over it.
Yeah.
And that's coming from his people. So, but they know also that it had to be done a certain way. Because there's just so much stuff that had to be cleaned out. I mean, so much.
I'm really glad. Thank you, Derek. I'm glad you said that because that's a perfect segue to my next question. We have a lot of people who have sort of, we'll call it intel fatigue, for lack of a better term, with all the correct information, the disinformation, the cross information. And everybody, when I say everybody, I mean collectively, I think our audiences really want to know, when is this coming to an end? When are we going to see arrests? When are we going to see justice? When are we going to see the finances right size themselves? So I, as best as you can share, what do you see from your protracted point of view militarily and also going to this event? What are your impressions on when you think people can kind of take a sigh of relief about that?
And I understand people's frustrations. I do. But I get frustrated more for people than I do at people. And I'm a terminology guy. But the other thing, though, is kind of like, well, a lot of people who are frustrated, well, why weren't you frustrated like before President Trump? To a point that led to a revolution. And it's kind of what President Trump made the point of with Zelensky. All right. He said in 2014, why wasn't Ukraine fighting as hard in 2014 to not give up their land to Russia like they are now? And it wasn't Zelensky back then. So there's another thing he was also alluded to. It was Poroshenko. All right. And a whole different group of people, which opens a big can of worms. Well, I mean, when you really look at the geopolitical arena everywhere, and you look at Ukraine, Russia, you look at China, then you look at Syria, you look at Egypt, you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, and Americans don't even know about Syria and Egypt and the conflicts that we were involved in the last 15 years. All right, so those two right there will come out more and more. And then, when you look at just those alone, and we can name a few others, but you look at those alone, those are militarily speaking. Then get into finances. go into the crisis and the 2008 financial crisis, you get into Goldman Sachs and all these different companies that were doing certain things. I mean, we're talking about money now, for guys, like yourself and my buddy in California, I was talking about and find it's easy for an accountant to get in and find stuff. But then when you're talking about a change, it had to be done lawfully. Then when you're pursuing someone, it had to be done lawfully. When you're charging someone, it has to be done. So everything had to be due process, right? Because if President Trump ever did skip due process anywhere, and also the military and government, then what would happen? Well, you'd lose your foundation and integrity on which what you're trying to change. So that's why all this stuff had to be drug out this long. And then when we get through it, it's going to be a massive clean out and a new foundation to stand on. It is a true revolution. They've reset Article 1, Article 2, and now we're going through the resetting of Article 3 of the Constitution and judicial branch. That's why everything is judge this, judge that, judge this, judge that. So everybody's going to see a true cleansing. President Trump said this 2 years ago, and someone found the video, and I got to go back and find it, but someone found the video of him saying the first marker would be Memorial Day 2025. That'd be your first marker. And I started talking about that when he said it, and I managed not, of all things I didn't say, I managed not to save that video, but someone found it. But he said Memorial Day 2025, and he said this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happens that Memorial Day this year is on the day of May 26th. May 26th, 1783 was the day our founders celebrated the end of the Revolutionary War. All right, and they titled it the Great Jubilee Day. And on that day, they had prayer, they had worship, they had thanks, they had meals, and they had military show of arms, meaning what they had back then, they fired cannons and they fired weapons, meaning a massive celebration. All right. So President Trump kind of gave everybody a taste of that 4 or 5 years ago when he had the massive show of arms out for 4th of July. And what did the liberals do? Oh, look at him. He's showing you what he's gonna do with our military. So they went the polar opposite of it. No. So it was a massive celebration. If everybody remember all the aircraft and the colors, and then also the tanks and things that were displayed. So, it'll be something like that, I do believe, because if we did all this just to not do anything and to teach people or re-educate people and or have accountability, responsibility, but also justice of what will happen in the future. Okay, if you do this, here's what happens. If you do this, if we just did all this just to roll right in and act like nothing happened, no one would ever know what to do with that. When he said on January the 20th, 2017, we're taking the power out of DC and giving it back to you, the people. People wouldn't know what to do with it if they didn't know what was cleaned out and if they didn't know what took place. So all along the way, it's been a rolling operation. You could have been seeing things, and you still can. But I do believe there will be a day, somehow, some way, that they will, because the only way to exonerate him is to clean his record. All right. So right now, the liberals think he's a felon, he's a molester, and he's a this and a that. So the only way he can be exonerated, like he said, he'd be not acquitted, exonerated, meaning nothing, not a blemish on his record, is to have to do what? Have a public showing of that. It won't be Republicans. It won't be Democrats. So that means a special operation that's been taking place. Somehow, some way, there's going to be somebody. That's why I've told people, don't judge people yet. When you don't know the military operations, special operations, don't be. It could be Obama. It could be Hillary. It could be Bill. I mean, it could be someone that you thought was the most far-fetched person, the most worst, evil scumbag on the earth that could have been playing a role. So I tell people, watch. And they can still be used as a pawn. They can still be a bad person, but be used as a pawn. All right. So that's why, we are in a revolutionary time period. And, Elon said that this is a revolution. Others have said a revolution. But when you look at unconventional warfare, which all the laws that I've shown outline unconventional warfare, that is the definition of unconventional warfare, is to disrupt, coerce, or overthrow a government. All right. And in the unconventional warfare pocket guide, Special Operations Command, on page 11, the diagram I always talk about to go look at, it's called a revolutionary pyramid. All right, so that's what everybody's watching, and that's the only way they can do it. It's the only way. So there has to be something. But I think it's more positive. Talking about positivity in a positive of the mind and spiritual. You know, you hear the 10 days of darkness and you hear all these people out there. I know what people have heard. You've heard, oh, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that, it's gonna be doomsday, and it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be that. Because you don't want to create all this great sensations and vibes and revolution and oh, you people have seen some things going, oh, this is great, this is awesome, this is wonderful. You don't go do all that and then come in there and go doomsday on everybody. That's my personal opinion. So I think it's going to be something to where, like the founders, and he said that day, Memorial Day 2025 to July 4th, 2026,
Sure.
will start the world fairs and people coming all over the world, and we're going to be doing this. So that's getting people involved. See, that's participation. That's communities, etc. And we just take it day by day. I don't know what it's going to look like, but he did say we will also rescue the homeless off the streets. There's not anything he said that hasn't happened. And if it hasn't per se, it's going to, because everything he has said has happened, and there's portions that hasn't, but it's going to. That's why he's marking in the new hat. Trump was right about everything. And he has been.
Yeah.
Because it was a plan.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cycle. It's a cycle of time, and it's really what I took away from what you said now is it's a graduation of learning, right? It's like you just don't go to grade school. You got to go through the different acumens of learning from grade school to, high school to college, and then post grad. If you're doing that, it's a cycle. It's a process. It's a protracted thing. It doesn't happen at once, but the problem is, I think we live in such a microwave society we've been brainwashed and inculcated to have this instantaneous gratification with stuff like this that, sidesteps us from the process, which when you're revolutionizing the country, when you're bringing us out from a corporation to a constitution and everything that entails, as you've talked about many times on our podcast before, it just can't happen in one day. The people would not be able to accept it.
You just brought up a great point of something that just happened with the FCC putting out a warning that obviously with CNN and their ratings they're gone, and all these big syndicated audiences. I mean, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted people to get hooked on instant gratification and not even news, because news isn't news, as we know.
Right.
When you think of an hour of your life, and an hour on local news will be everything. That'll be your traffic and your crime, and then your weather and your sports and your local sports and the college sports so that was all in one, and that's not news. Like if you don't go research like a bill being passed, they might tell you about it. Yep, this bill. But if you don't go read about it, go read that little fine print, then you can't be participant in that. Going whoa, what? And see, that shows you too, legislators. These judicial branch started writing the laws on their own, not we the people saying, hey, we want a law for this, or we want a bill for this, and then that. No, they started doing this on their own. So everything got backwards. And then everybody got hooked to a sensation and a quick fulfillment, which wasn't fulfillment. So that's a perfect example to show that is that, yeah, I mean, the reason why I know what I know is because I read stuff people don't want to read. I read the 300-page report. I read a 1,000-page publication.
Yeah. You get in the dirt just like you did militarily. It's the same process. And yeah, I mean, you're right, because like if you look at the legacy media, just by the time you get that news, it's already old. Similarly to kids going to public schools, the textbooks they're reading, by the time they get that information, is probably 15, 20 years old. So it's not really news at all. It's propaganda disguised as news. And so that's why people like you, patriots like you,
it keeps people dragged down, and that's what they want. So just what you said, 15 or 20 years old or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It just keeps society just staggering like that. And it keeps what? The elite up here who are tricking all the people, it keeps them elite.
Right. It's done on purpose to keep us in the dark. And that's where God can come in and bring the light. And you're a seminal example of that. So thank you. Last question for today, Derek, on the finance side, because we always cover this. Interestingly enough, I found this news today, Derek. You probably already aware of it. President Trump is making a big Middle East trip next week in Baghdad from the 13th to the 16th. Speaking of Iraq, and he said he'll be making a major announcement before departing. It'll be one of the most important announcements that he's ever made in many years about a certain subject. To me, it seems to be, to my mind, that seems to be a financial announcement that could be comprised of a peace deal, currency resets, maybe a combination thereof. Do you have any information or musings on that subject?
Then again, I might. I mean, with the Abraham Accords, I know that they were going to be trying to expand those. All the stuff going on with Iran too, that's a big deal. The nuclear weapons and the nuclear facilities, and of course, some people have managed to miss that they've been bombed a few times in the past, few months. Underground facilities,
Yep.
and I'll be able to talk about a little bit more what I saw when I was in the military to do with Iran, some things that I think that people could have been listening to back then. I mean, it's again, this is not something that's new, but Iran was in a place of, I mean, eyebrows raised, eyes bulging with what we're talking about with nuclear. They're the ones who've always chanted death to Israel and death to the USA.
Mm-hmm.
Death. And so, when President Trump started hammering Obama about the deal they made, and then also you had all the distractions with Bergdahl, remember the soldier that went AWOL,
Mm-hmm.
off post by himself, and we lost soldiers trying to rescue him, and I mean there's all kinds of things going on, but the deal that President Trump made with I mean well the one that Obama made first. And President Trump said, no bueno, that ain't gonna happen. We're gonna get in there. And so that's really generals talking through President Trump. A lot of people need to hear that. Now, I was on a couple weeks ago with Major General Paul Vallely and our
Mm-hmm.
crew on a round table. And then also I met a lieutenant colonel retired at Trump Doral this week that very very insightful too as well. I mean, most everybody who support me are lieutenant colonels, one major, but then lieutenant colonels, and generals. And that's because of the people who do what? Read all those PDFs we're talking about and read all these publications and put them together. So, there's a lot of implications that President Trump could be talking about. Saudi Arabia has been very active. I mean, we've had military
Yeah.
all over Oman and Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Israel still, Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
the seas surrounding, and then also the Mediterranean. So it's been a lot of activity. So who knows? It could be another thing again, like the Saudi Arabia crown. The sword crowning. Uh, it could be something of that nature of what's all been taking place. But the Bible. I know what the Bible talks about peace in the Middle East. I get that. I'm not a theologist by any stretch of the margin. However, uh, what President Trump has accomplished and the generals and everything with the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, it could be something that big as to a treaty or a peace, some kind of peace deal or peace agreement from that angle. And I think finances will be under that too, meaning like it's covered in it.
Yeah.
Uh, because again, anything with peace would mean prosperity for those nations as well, with all things, finances, economy, etc.
I think you're right. I'm glad you said that, Derek, because I think they go hand in hand. In fact, you mentioned earlier in the podcast about how God appoints his people. They may not be perfect people because nobody is, but President Trump, I think in many ways is King Cyrus, right? And what did King Cyrus do? He restored Israel and brought peace to Israel and prosperity to all the nations. I think in his first term, that's what he did with Israel, and now part two is the prosperity part. And you're absolutely right. They layer each other seamlessly. Just a quick last question for you, if you don't mind, a personal musing. I've been wondering because I have a bunch of military family and friends who, when they know I'm going to meet with you, they're like, ask them this, ask them that. Do you think some of we're seeing like earthquakes, and I think was it Thailand who had one the other day, I believe. and some parts of South America. It's scattered throughout the world. Do you think this systemic move of earthquakes that we're seeing throughout the world are really a function of DUMS units being blown up and cleanup military operations that are going on underground?
Yeah, it could be. And I would lean towards that. I had this conversation too with the lieutenant colonel I was talking about, different people. Uh, the average person's not going to believe that, and that's fine. But yes, from the standpoint, look, talking about Iran again, I remember seeing some of their nuclear stuff a long time ago, and we were told for a long time that was classified, not to really talk about it, that only certain people could talk about this. But uh, yeah, to get rid of some of that stuff, would it be, yeah, it could cause earthquakes and things of that nature, I would think. Now, I'm not a specialist in that field,
Sure.
but however, I would lead to believe that, yeah, most definitely. Uh, you got to get rid of it. How do you dismantle those things? And then also the retaliation of some of those countries. I would think Iran would be the first to retaliate if anybody. So retaliations could also mean detonations as well.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's why President Trump talks about the Iron Dome, and things of like that. Um, the Iron Dome it's kind of like CRAM. They can deflect a missile or they can detonate it right there, depending on what's under it. So there's been a lot of things that I saw way back. I was sending stuff way back in 2020 and 2021 to buddies. I'm like, you know what this is? What's it doing in DC? And the average person looking at it, they might see it and or hear it, but then all of a sudden goes back to they'll chalk it off as something else, transformer explosion, anything like that. So there's been a lot of stuff going on that people have heard or seen. They just didn't know what they were looking at or hearing. In case you hear anything yourself, I have a guy who just decided to cut the grass all of a sudden right next to me. So it's hard to concentrate with that loud thing running too. So,
Yeah.
uh, but
No, it's all good. Well, thank you, Derek. I tend to agree with you. I think that's exactly what's going on. I think it's a part of um, a greater operation of cleanup, you could say, and it has to be dealt with. You're absolutely right. So as we conclude, Derek, where can people find your work, and last thoughts you have for the audience today?
Yeah, so my link tree is probably the best. LINKTR period EE backslash 1776 nation. That pulls up all my links. And of course, The Midnight Rider Rides Again is still going strong. And that's the only book that outlines what's been taking place via the dash between 45-47, the strategic plan and operation. What's cool about it is President Trump signed an executive order this past week for intellectual property. So that's really great because intellectual property means that, yeah, laws and orders are public, but what I've done with that book is my take on the operation. That means no one else can ever duplicate that. So that's pretty cool stuff right there. So uh, it helps people. Everybody I've met all over the world. Uh, it's like a workbook, and it teaches people what's been going on, and it helps people not hear distractions and noise and hone in on not only this operation, but it might teach you something in your personal life how to focus on the task at hand, not all the noise and distractions around. Uh, so that's pretty much it. And I just tell people to hang on. I know people get tired of hearing it's a show, it's a movie, it's a this, it's a that, but it's been an operation. And thank God they're men and women way up here like President Trump and the generals and all the world leaders that knew all these rats and their links and their global alliance. And there's people all the way down working on this. So when it's all said and done, it will truly be a revolution and a great awakening and a clean slate for your children, your grandchildren, your great many generations. Um, so one closing thought, I heard someone this week say, well, a buddy of mine said that there's most everything President Trump's done has been executive orders and they can be overturned. I said, have you seen what's taken place in 9 years? If the Democrats couldn't do anything in 9 years, it will take them 300 years to undo everything that President Trump's done. So, he's done so much that you can't. It's rapid fire.
Yeah.
It's like a ball of yarn just rolling, or the game Plinko. It'd be like sitting up there and putting 1,000 pucks at one time and watching it. President Trump is rapid fire. So it's awesome. This is me daily, right? This is me daily with President Trump when he's truthing stuff, because I can keep up with it because my foundation's there. So if I'm like this, you don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that too, because when he brings us back to a constitutional republic and all that entails, they can't undo it. It's like a set of permanency. So even when he eventually, whether it's 2032 or whatever, when he steps down, he's left the country in amazing hands at that point, and we'll never be looking the same way we did. So you're 100% right. And
Well, wait on the Constitution, that they have re-educated themselves and seen it and go, oh, it was. And so if someone tries to go against it in the future, they're gonna be like,
right.
So see, it's a double whammy. Like, so yeah.
No, it's double indemnity. You're exactly right about that. Derek Johnson, thank you for joining us, good sir. We appreciate you. We salute you. We thank you for your time and energy and passion, information. We will get this up as soon as we can. We'll look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Sounds good.
Okay, God bless.
We'll see y'all.